pears look so good.
Yeah, let's get some.
Huh, two pears. Just like in the Study of Two Pears by Wallace Stevens.
Oh, that was one of my favorite poems we read this year. In the poem, Stevens begins by rejecting conventional comparisons. He says, the pears are not vials, nudes, or bottles. They resemble nothing else.
I think Stevens argues that these typical comparisons take away from the uniqueness and individuality of the pears.
Right, and Stevens spends the rest of the poem modeling how you should describe the pears. So he describes their color, their outline, their shape. And through this description, I think Stevens almost creates the describes the viewpoint of a painting. I think the best example of that is in the line, in the way they are modeled, there are bits of blue.
And by modeling how we should view and describe the pears, Stevens not only rejects the comparison of the poetry, but tries to offer what he describes in other writings of candid feeling.
Right, and by rejecting these comparisons, these resemblances, I think Stevens takes a very unique and unusual position towards poetry.
I agree. It would seem that the most stereotypical lines of this poem would begin with, oh, how a pear is like. By rejecting description through comparison, or at least the most typical comparisons, Stevens is rejecting conventional poetry stereotype.
Ironically, when Stevens establishes that pears are not vials, nudes, or bottles, he is almost evoking these comparisons in the reader's mind. Therefore, by simply mentioning these comparisons that he rejects, Stevens is almost furthering these ideas.
I can agree with that. I think there's something about those lines that goes back to the irony that Ed talked about. While the pears in his case seem as nudes, vials, and bottles, it's still these images that prevail at the end of the poem.
One way to read it is as a final assertion that the pears reject the typical comparisons found in poetry.
Let's talk a little bit about the language and the meter of the poem. Stevens writes in non-rhyming free verse, which slows the pace of the poem. And I think that this slower pace adds to the philosophical, contemplative tone of the poem.
Right, and Stevens relies on simple, almost dull language. I think this reflects the simplicity and dullness of the painting-like viewpoint that Stevens has.
But anyway...
Jinx!